Can this new welder from Vevor called the MiG 250 take us from being pretty bad at welding to at least half decent? Stick around to find out. So this is my old welder. This is the Lincoln AC 225, and this is an arc welder. This is great for welding really thick metals, but when it comes to welding thin materials, I end up just blasting right through and spending a whole bunch of time trying to fix those welds up. I just don't have enough experience and enough time and practice to get really good at it with this welder. A poor carpenter blames his tools, but even a poor carpenter will probably do a little bit better with a better tool, at least better for the job. Hopefully using this welder can change all that and allow me to weld up some thinner materials much more easily and produce better results as well. And if it works for me here, it should work for you too. So I was having a look on the Vevor website and this welder jumped out at me. This is the MiG 250. There's also a MiG 200. This is a fairly inexpensive option. On the US website, it's $272. I think that's the standard price. So very affordable. And it's also a 5-in-1, which means that it can do several different types of welding. This one can do MIG pulse, MIG with gas, gasless MIG, which is actually flux core welding. It can do TIG, but it doesn't come with the TIG attachments. And it can do arc welding or stick welding, if you want to call it that too. I don't want to get bogged down with all of the features because it would just take up too much time. I really want to test this thing out, but I will link the specs down in the description there if you want to see them. This is the variety of stuff that I like to weld today. So we have a whole bunch of different options, fairly thick angle brackets, square hollow tube, pieces of old bar clamp, big old rusty washers, some U-bolts from an exhaust system off of my tractor, some old railroad spikes from the antique shop, some old bolts as well, hollow tube, pretty thin gauge from Home Depot. And then I have these, which should be pretty difficult, very thin Simpson strong ties. And then all of this stuff went into an acid bath, which was acetic acid or vinegar, overnight, and that removed the zinc coating. So they are down to bare steel. And then of course I just polished it up either with the wire wheel on my angle grinder or Scotch-Brite on my bench grinder. This welder is capable of running off of 120 volt, except if we do that, we're limiting it to 120 amps maximum. If we're using 240 volts, we're going to be maximum up to 250 amps, which is what this welder is actually called, the MiG 250. It comes with an adapter, so we can plug that in. And since I already have another welder, I already have a 50 amp ready to go that I can plug this into. With the adapter on the end, looks like the cord length is overall around 8 feet, which is pretty good. My other welder is about 6 feet or so for cord length. This welder comes with a small spool of flux core wire. This is 1 kilogram, so that's what we'll be using for the tests. To hook up for gasless MIG flux core, take this cord, plug it into negative. Our clamp goes to positive. And our whip, which has all the controls built right into it, into here. There we go. That's pretty easy. I think I'm really going to need a welding cart for this thing. Definitely don't do that. I thought I was being careful. All right, so I'm going to clip the end off. It doesn't seem to want to go any further. I'm not sure if that's because the wire is a little bit bent. I'll cut it on an angle. Definitely a lot straighter. Yep, that's it. Oh, there it is. And this can go up, spring loaded. This welder also comes with these, which are for all the different sizes and all the different materials of wire. So this is for 1 millimeter on this side, 0.8 millimeter on that side. I will be welding with the garage door open. It's raining outside right now. I was planning on doing this all outside. On weld mode, MIG, arc, TIG lift, MIG manual, So I think MIG pulse is the one we're going to be going with. Trigger mode, 2T or 4T. 2T I believe is for spot welding, 4T is for continuous welding. Wire size, 1 millimeter. When I had it set to MIG pulse, I couldn't change the material to flux wire. So it needs to change to MIG manual. And then we have the option for flux. Amperage 100 to 180. So that's a pretty big range, and 16 to 19 volts. Even though I'm used to welding with the arc welder, it's still a little bit surprising to me how quickly that happened. And it just, yeah, it took me a little bit by surprise. Oh, God. So I'm going to have to fix this. I think what I'll do is I'll just cut all of this nest off. And it looks like it broke. To run a long bead and see if I can get this thing all welded up. I don't like that very much. I went completely off track. I couldn't see what I was doing. Something a little bit strange there. It continues to feed wire even though I let off the trigger. I'm not sure if that's just because of the 4T setting. Probably. Let's try the 2T there. There's actually some scale on this side, so it's probably a bit too hot. So the 4T setting wants to continue to feed wire, and the 2T, it stops the wire feed immediately. I don't know if I could call that pretty, but definitely is way better than what my stick welding looks like. Practice time is over. Let's see what we can do with some of these. Okay, I've upped the voltage to 17.5. I've got the amperage at 170. That's a little bit too much. Back down to 145 and 16.5. See, I blew through the bottom there of the 1/8 of an inch. It's on there. Okay, I blew through there. Still a little bit too high on the settings. And my handle was really hot too. I'm gonna cool this off and come back. I think I can do a lot better if I try this again. So I'm gonna give it one more go, and I think I should be able to dial the settings in a little bit better. I wasn't seeing any way of adjusting the wire feed speed on this unit, and it turns out the way you do it is through the amperage setting. So if we start with a really low amperage, we get a slow feed speed, and if we start with a much higher one, we get a much faster feeding on the wire. On thicker material, we're gonna need higher amperage, and we're gonna get a larger weld pool, more material being used up. I think we've messed around enough. I have a real project that I wanna work on. This is my General 490 bandsaw, and it's pretty old. It has a lot of work that needs to be done on it, but especially in the base. If you look here, all of these holes, cutouts, just holes all over the place. A gigantic hole here, down there. I'm gonna fill this big rectangular hole and that small one there. It's pretty thin steel, so it should be a good little challenge for this welder. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just get rid of some of this paint near where we need to weld, and that way this paint is not going to overheat and just melt, so I don't need to breathe it in. It's a little bit difficult still, but this is the settings I've got, 16 volts and 45, 46, 45 for the amps. That seems to work pretty well for this thin material. I still blew through on that little tiny washer there. It was getting a little bit too hot. So now I'm gonna do these two holes, and then I'm gonna do the full panel that goes into here. And as you can see, I'm just getting the inspection done with this little 8-legged guy. No issues up near the top and on the sides. On the bottom, I did have a problem. I actually had a couple problems. The first was that the gap was way too big on the bottom, so I didn't have the right size piece to fill in. It was warping as I was welding, and you can see here that it pulled in. It made it so that it wasn't as easy to weld up, it wasn't as flat. So I really need to take this whole thing off. I need to get the motor out and give it a few whacks with a hammer to bring this back to the right shape approximately. And when I ground it down, it's pretty good. This does need more work, of course. The whole thing needs more work. And this steel is just slightly over a 1/16 of an inch thick. So that's pretty impressive that I was able to even do this at all. The inspector was on his way back up, giving me the A-OK to move ahead. This unit has some fail-safe settings built into it. So with 1 millimeter, the minimum is 43 amps. But if I turn it down to 0.8, the minimum is 27 amps. I probably could have been able to get better results with this really thin material if I had a different wire size, if I had the 0.8 wire size. I was able to figure out the issue there with the 4T. That's the continuous weld. That requires a double release of the trigger in order to get it to stop. So that's really just to help your hand if you're doing a lot of welding. So there's definitely a lot to like about this welder and a few areas of improvement as well. I really like the dual voltage setup. I won't be using it that often, But if you want to weld somewhere else around your property, you can plug it into any outlet. That's not the case with my stick welder. But if we do that, we are limiting the amperage to 120 amps, I believe, and also the duty cycles are affected as well. So if we're plugged into 240 volts and maxing out the amperage at 250 amps, we have a duty cycle of 20%. That is 2 minutes on, 8 minutes off for the cool down. If we jump down to 145 amps, we are at 60%. And if we jump down to 112 amps, we're at 100% duty cycle, meaning you can weld nonstop. If we plug this unit into 120 volts, it's reduced to a little bit less than half. So at 120 amps, the maximum for 120 volts, we have a 20% duty cycle. And at 54 amps, we have 100%. I'm a big fan of these fine adjustment knobs to really dial in the settings, but I'm not really good enough at this point to take advantage of that, but at least I can grow into the unit. It's nice and compact, easy to move around, not too heavy. The handle on the top makes that a bit easier as well. There's a little bit to get used to on the screen here because it is limiting some of what your options are, and only under certain options are you able to use those features. And I like that it is standard connections. That means any of these cables can be replaced with off-the-shelf cables. This one, for example, is a little bit short for the clamp. I might eventually like to replace that with something a bit longer. As far as things I'm not a huge fan of, the spool loading didn't go very well for me. That could just be my inexperience, but it looks to me like the mechanism for holding the spool is different from some of the other units. So that might be an area for improvement. The wire feed speed is not adjustable independent of the amperage. Maybe if you're experienced in welding, you can help me with that one, but it does seem like that may be a good feature to have as well. And some of the features with this welder are only available with gas, so I should have really had a gas cylinder here that I could have tested that out. The question is, after seeing what this welder can do and how easy it is to use, should I hang on to this welder or should I go ahead and sell it? I'm curious to know what you think. I went from having never used a welder like this to being able to weld thin materials, which was what I was hoping for. Unfortunately, they didn't look quite as nice as I would have liked, but I think part of that comes down to my inexperience with this type of welding, but also the fact that I can't utilize all the features on this welder. I need to use gas, and it was a little bit of a letdown. So if you'd like to see a follow-up video where I test some additional features on this welder, let me know down there below and I'll get set up to do that. I'd like to thank Vevor for sending this to me to test out. None of my videos are paid sponsorships, but sometimes I take product if I think I can use it around the shop or I think it's helpful to you guys as well. My videos are supported by you on YouTube and also through affiliate links, which I'll have down there below. Thanks to my patrons for helping to support this channel and keeping us going strong. And thank you for watching. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.